So what I wanted to just tell you before we have our real keynote speaker come before you is I had an opportunity a year ago to get a call from one of my clients. I'm general counsel to the Professional Assistance Program of New Jersey. And Dr. Lewis Baxter called me and said, Nan, I'm sending someone over to you. I want you to take good care of him. It's Vance Johnson. And I said, Vance Johnson, not the NFL player. He said, oh, yes. And he needs a healthcare lawyer. So without going into all of the details, I will tell you, he does. He needs a healthcare lawyer in this state, and he can discuss that with you. So I met with Vance. We had an opportunity to discuss his needs, and I found out very quickly that he is an incredible, dynamic person who has a wonderful history, a history that would make you stop in your tracks and say, oh my God, I can't believe you've done all of this. It's amazing. I fangirl over him all the time. But he and I have developed a very close friendship, and I'm very blessed to say that he is my friend, and I'm absolutely honored to say that he's my client. But he is changing the face of addiction in this country, period. And when I saw that there was an opportunity to speak before you during AROC, I suggested to Taima that perhaps everyone might want to hear from Vance because he's got a tremendous story to tell. He was a patient. Someone changed his life, and he's going to discuss that with you. So before I continue rambling on and you fall asleep, let's all welcome Vance Johnson and hear what he has to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Taima, thank you so much for inviting me here today. Man, that was wonderful. I learned so much. I wish I was a doctor. I'd know what to do. So, Dr. Otto, congratulations, sir. And I'm going to step away from this mic a little bit. It's kind of driving me crazy listening to that whistle. Honored to be here this year to share my journey, my story. I wondered initially, well, let me back up. I'm a little under the weather. I'm coming on the other side of either a flu or a cold or something. So is there a doctor in the house I can get a second opinion? My wife pumped me full of stuff, and for the last couple of days, I've been just bedridden. I was on the Dr. Oz show there in Palm Beach, Florida a couple of days ago. And we had a whole day of session inside of a mall where we had about 8,000 people that were there. And he asked me to speak on and about opioids and also my story, my history, and my use of alcohol and drugs. Man, thanks again so much for allowing me to be here with you. That was wonderful. And I do consider you a great friend.
Thank you.
I am originally from Trenton, New Jersey. I'm in New Jersey, that's right. My father actually grew up here in New Jersey in the streets of Trenton, and he was a gangbanger. He ran the streets, and he was involved in drugs and alcohol, just really running the streets, running numbers, did a number of different things here while he tried to navigate and survive here in the state. Eventually, after my father got in a lot of trouble with the law, he was put before the court and told, listen, you have to make a decision, young man, because you're going to eventually end up dead and or you're going to be in prison for a long time. So we're going to offer you a chance to just join the service. So my father opted to join the service, and he was stationed in Fort Huachuca, Arizona, down in Tucson, Arizona. In Tucson, Arizona, my father would go out and have a good time whenever they allowed these guys to leave the base. And I think everyone's over probably 40 years, not everyone, some people are over 40 years old. So you remember the singer James Brown? Well, my father went to a James Brown concert. He was 21 years old and in the service, and he actually walked up to this car where there was a young lady sitting behind the window inside of a car, and he tapped on the window, and back then you used to have to roll the window down like this. So he introduces himself to her and says, my name is Eugene, and she says, my name is Imogene. So he said, why aren't you in there in the party? She says, well, I'm only 15 years old, and my boyfriend went in, and I'm not allowed to go in. I always tell the young ladies when I go to high schools, don't practice a 15-year-old, 20-year-old thing. That doesn't work. But they stayed there and talked for two or three different hours. And after they got a chance to know each other, he got her phone number. And he started to go out to Marana, Arizona, where my mother worked at on the cotton gin yard. She picked cotton for 16 cents a day. After a short dating spree, my father decided to go to the high school where she was a sophomore, and he walked across a gym floor and up onto a stage where she was practicing being an actress and proposed to her. And she said, I'll marry you, but you have to ask my daddy. So they went back to the cotton yard where my grandfather was, and he asked for my mother's hand in marriage, and they got married. So he then got married and avoided the draft somehow and went back to New Jersey. So coming back into New Jersey, I ended up being born, right, at Mercer Hospital. There was something that happened, though. My mom, this young 16-year-old now, this 22-year-old, he started to run the streets again, started to get involved in drugs and selling drugs and alcohol, running the streets. Another thing he started to do was abuse my mother. When this happened, my mom decided that she just couldn't take it anymore, so she decided to move back to Arizona and take her young son. So when she went back to Tucson, Arizona, which is around the Marana area, my father missed me and my mother, and he decided to go out there and collect my mom and myself, and then we came back out to New Jersey. After another year, my sister was born. The only thing that didn't stop, though, was my mother was being abused. So she decided to leave this guy for the last time, and she packed my sister and I up and took a train back to Arizona. Said, if you want to be around these kids, you're going to have to come back out to Arizona to be with these kids. So my dad moved to Tucson, Arizona to be with myself, my sister, and my mom. The abuse didn't stop, though. My father would run the streets. He'd be out partying, selling drugs, doing drugs, drinking heavily, and chasing women. My mother would be home on her knees all the time just crying. And as a young child, seeing a lady sitting in the bedroom on her knees always crying and praying, and seeing a father coming home 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning after having a great time, being high, you're trying to figure out, is this just your normal as a child? And it became my normal as a kid. I remember sitting in the back seat of a car. It was old Plymouth. My sister and I would be in the back seat. And Mom and Dad would be in the front seat arguing. My father would reach over and he'd hit her in the face, and blood would just splatter all over the windshield. This is what I saw. My sister and I would be in the back seat crying. A lot of pain, but again, this was our normal. We didn't really talk about our business out in the street, but this is what we saw at home. And again, this mother that always just got on her knees and prayed. So my only escape was sports. That was my high. That was my way to get away from the chaos and the dynamics that were happening inside my home. I ran so much that I would end up falling asleep at night because all I wanted to do was run, to just get rid of and get away from the chaos that I witnessed at my home. As time went on, I had high school coaches, junior high school coaches, and teachers that would take me under their wing, spend time with me, love on me. They knew something was going on at home, but they weren't willing to go over the edge to try to find out exactly what it was. So they just kind of guided me through my sports career so that I could kind of just live a life that was a little bit different, a lot different from what I was witnessing at home. A place that I didn't like being, and a thing that I didn't want to be was to be like my father when I grew up. I vowed that I would never be like my father. So it was about sports to me. It was about winning. And then what I noticed was when I started to win in track, when I started to make touchdowns in football, I saw that the domestic violence was less in the home. Now, it did not slow down the use of my father getting high. I smelled the weed. I knew that he took pills. I knew that he drank all the time and he'd come home late. But for some reason, being that hero in the house, I saw the violence dissipate just a little bit. I tell high school kids, you may be the hero, you may be the jokester. You play some role if you're in this dynamic in your home to try to survive, navigate whatever's going on in your home. Mine was sports. And I got really, really good at it. I got good at it not only in the United States, but all over the world. I was ranked really high. When I went to high school, I'd be on the football field and I'd score 4 touchdowns. My father would be standing on the sidelines drunk. He'd put his hand up and put up 5. So I'd make a 5th touchdown. When I went to football practice, my father would drop me off at practice and tell me he'd pick me up in a few shakes. 12 o'clock at night, 1 o'clock in the morning, my dad would eventually pick me up. My high school coach ended up giving me a key to the gym so that I could be in there working out and just training so I could just get better and better and better at what I was wanting to do when I grew up, and that was be a professional football player and also go to the Olympics. And I was never going to be like my father growing up. I was never going to do drugs, I was never going to drink, and I was never going to put my hands on a woman. That was what I wanted to do when I was young, was to not be like what I saw when I was at home. When I got to college, I had a chance to be away from home, but still be a part of the dynamics at home because I was always wanting to be there for Mom. Right before I left the college, I had a big fight with my father. I threw him on the ground, and I had this rock, and I just wanted to bash him over the head. And I said, don't you ever put your hand on my mother again. And he started to cry. He was high. And said, why don't you just effing kill me? And I said I would, but I don't want to. You're not worth it. In fact, it was a point in my life, my young life, where I told myself, because of what I saw my father doing with the affairs and what I saw him doing with the drugs and with the alcohol, that I was actually going to, and I hate to say this, but I need to just be very transparent. I was going to cut my penis off. Because the last thing I ever wanted to do was have children and or do what I saw him do as a child with the women that I saw. With the fights that me and my mother would have with other women in the bars that we'd had to pull off from my father. And the only way I escaped was sports. Was running track, playing football. Then I was drafted in 1985 by the Denver Broncos. When you have that many football cards, you've been in the NFL a little bit too long. When I got there to Denver, I was like, this is the best thing that ever happened to me. The newspaper said, Broncos add Vance. One of the happiest days of my life. To this point in my life, I had never drank, never done drugs or anything. 22 years old. My father flew out to town. He ended up picking me up, and we went out to go out. He drank, and I ordered a soda pop. My father and I were still okay at that time because I had wanted to make sure that I stayed in his life because he was my father. And being a Christian, the Bible always said to obey and honor your mother and father. I know that's kind of hard to do, but I was called to do that because, again, my mother was that praying woman, and they were still married at this time. I had a chance to play in my first professional football game against the San Francisco 49ers. We were playing in Candlestick Stadium in San Francisco. I was standing on the 10-yard line. All I had to do was catch a punt. Just catch a punt. I could catch a punt with my eyes closed. But there was something about playing inside Candlestick Stadium where you saw the ball in the air and the wind was blowing off the ocean, and so the ball really swirled around in the air. So I'm standing on the 10-yard line. All I have to do is fair catch it, and or if it goes over my head, let it roll into the end zone. So the ball's coming a little in front of me, and the ball's going back. And so I reach back. I'm going to fair catch. No, I'm going to catch it. But it hits my hand, rolls into the end zone. San Francisco scores a touchdown and wins the ball game. First game of my career. My teammates all look at me like, dude, your career is over with. I'm so nervous by the time we get on the airplane to head home. I know that my career is over with and I'm going to get cut. The very next morning, we're on our way to the practice field where we're going to watch the film and the cuts will be made shortly after that. I'm so nervous. I'm like, guys, I can't get rid of this pain and stress that I'm dealing with. What can I do to knock it off a little bit? They said, you know what, Vance, we're stopping by the liquor store. I said, no, I don't drink. They said, come on, man, just one shot of tequila. I took a shot of tequila, guys, and I was like, whoa. This is one of the best feelings I've ever had. I don't care if they cut me or not. It doesn't matter to me. They didn't cut me. And I was like, so I can just have a drink every time I'm dealing with something and I can get past this? Then all of a sudden they introduced opioids with pain that I had. So a combination of a little alcohol and a pill or two made things just go away for me. It was a way to navigate. It was the easy way to navigate. And so I always looked forward to it. And being in the NFL, pills are always readily available. It was like the photo that she showed, where you open it up and it's the cabinet. That was the doctor. They didn't ask questions. They just wanted you on the football field. So I took anything that I could so that I could be cognitive out there on the football field and be able to make plays and mix a little alcohol with it. I started to go out on dates. Went out with a young lady. I get a call a few weeks later. She's in Houston, Texas. And she says to me, I'm going to have an abortion. I'm like, please don't kill the baby. I'll marry you. Well, we don't believe in abortion in my family. She says, we have to fly out here and we'll fly to Vegas and we'll get married. So I grab a bottle of tequila, I grab a couple pills, I take them, I fall off the wall outside of my house, I crawl into the house and I throw up all over the rug. I take a couple more pills when I get up in the morning and some alcohol and catch an airplane to Houston and we fly out to Las Vegas. And we actually went through a drive-through and got married in Vegas like a McDonald's and got married for $12. So we're married and we're heading back to Denver, Colorado. Get to Denver. We ended up having a son, a little boy named Vaughn. I go to practice one day. I'm in the shower with a whole bunch of guys. And one of the guys looks over at me and says, "How's our girl Ange?" I said, "Who are you talking about?" Another guy says, "Oh yeah, I know her. I know Ange." Then they went on to tell me some other things they knew about her. This was my wife. So I got in my car and I went home and I drove as fast as I could. And I was popping pills and drinking all the way home because I knew whenever I felt that feeling, there was no way that I would stop doing whatever I felt like I needed to do. So when I went home, I pushed her across the bed and she hit her head on the door in the closet. And I thought she was dead. So I picked her up and I grabbed her into the bathroom. And I started trying to dump water in her face from the sink. And I couldn't revive her, and so I started throwing water out of the toilet into her face. I know this may be hard for some of you to hear, but if I'm not honest with you, then you won't know my story. And then people who need to hear my story won't see that there actually is a way out of this hell. When she came to, I was screaming and yelling and calling her so many names. I was punching the walls and putting holes in the walls. Who did I just become? My father. But I didn't care. I'm not like my father. My father beat on my mom and she didn't deserve anything. This was my world. I was famous. I made millions of dollars and I could do what I want to do. I could date who I want to date. I could see who I want to see. And as long as I created this image, the Vance, and I can get as many pills as I wanted to, I could drink as much as I wanted to, I could be high as hell driving down the highway and get pulled over going 150 miles an hour on a Saturday afternoon. But because the game was on a Sunday, the cop wasn't going to put me in jail. He knew I was high. He saw the empty pills there in the seat. I go to the doctor. They give me some other prescriptions for antidepressant. Anything I needed just so that I could cope and get back on the field. Smoke a little weed. But for some reason, I navigated not having to worry about getting busted, so I wasn't ineligible. If they had social media back then, I would have been in jail for a long time. And I should have died. After 10 years of my career, all the use, barely even remembering most of my career, 10 years and 3 Super Bowls. I was married 5 times, 7 children. I thought I was a good father because my exes would bring the kids to the football games and they'd be on the football field running up and down the field before the game. And I'd hand them back across the fence after the game, or before the game rather. And everyone's cheering for my kids when they're running up and down the field. Oh, Vance Johnson's such a good father. What kind of father was he? Who was Vance really looking for and worshiping when he was pointing up at the sky after making the touchdown? It was all about myself. After my career, I moved up to northern Colorado. Got married for the 6th time. We got divorced pretty fast because I knew that I couldn't navigate through a marriage because everything that I grew up around, I didn't know how to do it. All I knew about relationships was whatever I saw in these sitcoms for 30 minutes or an hour. I had that much to impress you. But after that, all I knew was the dynamic that I grew up around as a child. I moved to the western slope of Colorado after getting my 6th divorce, and I got married again 7 times now. All of a sudden, my children start getting older, and they want to spend time with Dad. I'm still running the streets. I'm chasing women. I'm getting high. I'm taking all types of pills. It didn't matter what I was taking. Now I'm taking Seroquel, 500-600 milligrams. Smoking weed, drinking. My oldest son decides to come over and spend some time with me. He says, "Daddy, I just want to grow up to be like you. I want to be famous like you. I want to have a mortgage company like you. I want to have a real estate company like you. I want to do everything that you do, Dad. I want to play pro football." So he's going to college there. My son ends up driving my Porsche sometimes because I'm too drunk, so he has to pick me up. Eventually, my son had to head back across the mountain to go see his mother because her father had just died of cancer. So he takes his motorcycle across the mountain because he couldn't reach me because I was high or chasing or doing something. And my son ends up taking his motorcycle, and he is driving down the street, and a drunk driver runs a stop sign and kills my son. I get a phone call about 10:30 in the morning. I was at my restaurant. I had a bottle of tequila. I set the glass down and drank 2 bottles of tequila. And I walked around the restaurant. And for the next 2 years, all I did was drink, take pills, chase women, and just try to destroy my life. Every doctor I saw, all they did was prescribe another pill to me so that I could get over whatever I was dealing with. So when Nan was saying click, 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 oh my God, how many times did I hear click, click, click? I ended up using myself into a coma. This was a good day. My sister came. They said things were starting to shut down inside of me, so they didn't know after I even came back how much longer it would be until things just really started to cut off inside me. When I woke up, I was chained to the bed, and I was crapping all over myself. And they'd come in and unchain me and roll me over and wipe it off of me. And I was looking up into the sky like, really, this is how it's going to end for me? When they finally let me out of here, all they did was click, click, click. Told me to slow down a little bit with the drinking and take some antidepressant medication. No questions about anything. So I went back home, moved into my mom and dad's house and said, you know what, I'm going to be like I was when I was young. I'm just going to work on staying in shape and thinking about things outside of whatever I'm dealing with emotionally. I'm just going to work hard again like I did when I was a kid. And for about 4 or 5 months, I stayed clean. And I went golfing one day, and I had a Mike's Hard Lemonade. The next thing you know, I was trying to find pills anywhere I could again, just so that I could cope. Smoke weed, pills, drinking. I had a dog there at my mom's house, the dog be there whining. I'd be drinking tequila. In the mornings, I'd drink what I thought was tequila in a glass. Obviously, it wasn't tequila. I couldn't make it to the bathroom. I started throwing up blood. Finally, I was just driving through a canyon one day, and I was just screaming out to this God, please help me because I can't do this on my own. And I remember a voice saying, you have to be alone with me. I didn't really know what that meant. But because of this world that I had created for myself, there was no way I was going to get clean there. My then 7th ex-wife reached out to the NFL and said, this guy is killing himself, please help him. So they called another professional football player in Florida to give me a call to say the NFL would pay for me for 30 days to go get help. After about 3 months of lying to him, I eventually got on an airplane and came to Florida, where all of a sudden, here I am in a room full of a whole bunch of kids between 20 and 33 years old, strung out on opioids. The alcoholics and opioid users my age were there as well. 100 of us. But I didn't want to be around them because they were drug addicts and alcoholics. I wanted to go to a beach, be around professional football players who were just needing to get cleaned up, watch girls play volleyball, but I was inside this place. And I started walking around outside this gate like, really, God, this is where you want me to get help at? Around these people? And I realized, after I heard a voice in my head say, yes, Vance, you have to get help amongst the sick because you're sick. And I went back in there. And I started to see how these guys were just like me. And I started to listen to the stories about what they grew up in and around when they were children. I started to realize that I had a problem with addiction. I'm going to back up a little bit more because some of you may wonder, how did this have anything to do with osteopath? Before I went to rehab, I went to go see a doctor. I went to go about my blood pressure, and he would ask me about my sex life. I went to go about my blood pressure, and he asked me about things that happened to me when I was a child. I went to go about my blood pressure, and he would ask me so many different questions about so many different things that I would leave and say, what kind of doctor is he? And he never gave me opioids, not one time. What he did tell me to do was, you need to go to rehab. So after he nursed me back and did all of these different amazing things to me to get my health back a little bit so that I could have a little bit of a clear head, although I was still drinking, I eventually went to rehab. And in this rehab for 30 days, I just really focused on, if I drank and used for so many years, there's no way I could be sober when I leave out of here in 30 days. This is just the beginning. And I started to realize when I first left that place that this is the whole reason why I traveled this journey in the first place. So that one day I could be a voice to break these stigmas about losers being addicts and alcoholics. So I went back home to Denver, Colorado. Less than a year later, I was offered a job to go back out and basically be a ball boy at the same facility that I got help at. They said, we'll give you like $200 a week and a bus pass. I took the job. But before that, I was offered a job by the Denver Broncos on a Friday, $2,000 a week just to be me. Go to the parties, have a good time, enjoy myself. $2,000 a week, $200 a week. I called my mother. And she said, son, you're going to do the right thing. So I got on the airplane and I went back to Florida. I caught a bus to work for the next 16 months and learned more and more and more about the pitfalls of addiction. And I started to get offered opportunities to go around the country to speak, mainly to a lot of churches where my Christian brothers and sisters, believers, thought that they were just going to have a miracle and get sober. No, you have to go get help. Then I started going to high schools and drug court graduations. And then I was offered an opportunity to move to New Jersey, my home state where I vowed never to come back to be a part of change that's happening here. And I've gone to all the drug court graduations. I do interventions. I do all types of work just so I can lead people to a sober life, to educate them about the pitfalls of this addiction. I was offered a chance to work for Futures of Palm Beach as an outreach coordinator, along with my colleague Nicole right there in the back. And we traveled through New Jersey just to go out to reach out to people who are looking to get help, to get them into a drug and alcohol rehab so they can start their lives all over again. And being home and standing in front of you, now I realize the journey that I traveled was so I could be in front of you, so I can encourage all of you. Because Dr. Mark Twardowski, who's the DO, saved my life. And you guys are the difference. When I look at you, I see Dr. Twardowski. Because there's so many lives that you're going to save. And it may just be one, but you're the ones that are going to do it. And so I'm just here as a messenger to tell all of you, thank you for being who you are. Thank you for making a difference. And thank you for being set apart and not just to click, click, click. God bless you guys. Thank you so much for letting me share my story. Thank you. Thank you, sir.